What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G versus the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G. Now, the A33 5G was recently launched in April of 2022, and as the name does imply, this phone is the successor to last year's A32 5G. And going from this phone to this phone really does give us quite a few improvements and differences, so I'm looking forward to highlighting all of that throughout this video. Now, to see the most up-to-date pricing and availability for both of these devices, definitely take a look at the various links in the video description, as I'm sure that will change as time goes on. Now, with the Galaxy A33 5G, we have a 6.4-inch display compared to a slightly larger 6.5-inch display with the Galaxy A32 5G. Now, another major difference is the actual display technology. Now, with the A33 5G, we have a Super AMOLED display at 1080p, compared to a TFT display at 720p with the A32 5G. Now, in addition to that, with the A33 5G, we have a PPI 411 and a screen-to-body ratio of 83.7%, compared to a PPI of 270 and a screen-to-body ratio of 81.6% with the A32 5G. Now, both of these devices do feature 20:9 aspect ratios, so we are getting a more narrow but taller form factor, which is certainly nice. But you can see, looking side by side at these two phones, the display is way better with the A33 5G. Super AMOLED is pretty much as good as it can get, especially for a mid-range device, so I'm glad that we're getting that here with the A33 5G. But in addition to that, viewing angles are better. Of course, since it is a higher resolution, things are going to look more crisp and clear compared to what we're getting here with the A32 5G. So in general, it's pretty much better in every single way. Now you can see up top here with both devices, we do have water drop notches. They are a little bit different in shape. However, I do wish that with the A33 5G, we had a hole punch for the front-facing camera instead, but I suppose this is how it is. Now, both devices do have thicker bottom bezels, but it is a little bit thicker here with the A32 5G. And in general, when holding the two phones up next to each other, the A32 5G is the larger phone of the two. Now, as far as storage goes, both devices feature 128 gigabytes of internal storage. However, with the A33 5G, there is an option for 256 gigabytes, and both devices do support microSD card expansion. So if you do happen to fill up all of the internal storage, then you can always offload photos and videos, for example. Now, neither of these two phones have wireless charging, but they do both have fingerprint sensors. However, they are located in different areas. So with the Galaxy A33 5G, we do have a fingerprint sensor built into the display. Now, it does work really well, as you can see. We'll give that a try one more time. And then with the A32 5G, the fingerprint sensor is built into the power button. Now, that's not quite as good of an implementation, in my opinion, compared to what we're getting with the A33 5G, but at least it does work pretty well. So let's give that a try. There we go. One more time. There we go. So it is pretty fast and responsive, but again, I do prefer how we have it here with the A33 5G. Now, thankfully, both of these phones do support Face Unlock, so it is nice that we at least have multiple methods for getting into the devices. Now, surprisingly, even though the camera modules look a bit different, the actual megapixel count for all the cameras on these two devices and the actual camera features themselves are the same. So of course, both phones have quad camera setups. They both have 48 megapixel main cameras, 8 megapixel ultra wide angle cameras that can capture images at 123 degrees, 2 megapixel depth sensing cameras, and 2 megapixel macro cameras. And then, as I showed you before, with the front facing cameras, those are both 13 megapixels. So it is pretty interesting that despite there being so many differences between these two phones, the actual camera features that we're getting and the various megapixel counts actually happen to be the same. Now, these two phones also support portrait mode for the front and rear cameras, so if you are a big fan of that feature, then just know that you are indeed getting that here. Now, here's how things look with the main cameras on both devices. Then from here, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle cameras and we can fit a lot more content into the frame. Now, I will say, even though the megapixel counts are the same for both phones for all the cameras, in general, you are going to be getting better photo and video quality with the A33 5G. That's just based off of my experience of using both of these phones. Now, of course, if you want to see a variety of different photo and video samples from both devices, then definitely take a look at my full review videos that I've done for both of these phones here in the channel. But then from here, we can head over to the More tab on both devices to then access the macro cameras. So once we're in macro, we can get very close up here and have things be in really good detail. We can then switch around to the portrait mode option to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. And then we can flip around to the front-facing cameras in both phones to take portrait selfies. Of course, we also have an option for standard selfies too, which is pretty good. And if you want to as well, you can crop out a bit to take a group selfie. So that's pretty cool that if you want to fit multiple people in one selfie, both of these devices will make that easier. So I certainly appreciate that despite these two phones being mid-range devices and not really expensive phones like the Galaxy S22 Ultra, for example, we are still getting a variety of different camera features, so that's always appreciated. Now, as far as processor and RAM go, based on the region that you're getting these devices in, that could be different. However, both of these phones that I have right now have 6 gigabytes of RAM, and the processors are different. Now, with the A33 5G, we have the Samsung Exynos 1280 processor compared to the MediaTek Dimensity 720 5G processor with the Galaxy A32 5G. So while these processors are different, it is at least nice that both phones do support 5G, hence the names of both devices. Now, certainly in 2022, you can still get by with just 4G LTE. However, it's certainly very nice to have a phone that supports your carrier's most up-to-date and latest network. So I'm sure as time goes on, having a 5G enabled device will become more and more of a necessity. Now, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test with both phones, and I'll show you the scores from that test right now. But essentially, there is a pretty big improvement here going from the A32 5G to the A33 5G. You can see we have a single core score of 694 versus 491. And a multi-core score of 1865 compared to 1664. And this is probably a good opportunity looking at these two phones side by side to really get a good idea of the differences when it comes to the displays. You can see how with the A33 5G, the display is much brighter and colors are much better compared to what we're getting here with the A32 5G. Now, video recording with these two devices maxes out at 4K with the rear cameras. However, for the front cameras, we have 4K video recording with the A33 5G, but only 1080p with the A32 5G. Now, as far as battery capacity goes, both phones do have very large 5,000 milliamp hour internal batteries, which is great. You should definitely expect to get at least a day, if not two, of usage out of these phones. However, one difference is that the A33 5G supports 25 watt fast charging, whereas with the A32 5G, that is limited at 15 watts. As far as software goes, the A33 5G runs Android 12 out of the box, whereas the A32 5G originally came with Android 11. However, it has since gotten the update to Android 12. That is worth considering though, because Samsung is now giving all of their A series phones at least 4 years of major Android software updates. So considering that the A33 5G comes with a newer version of Android originally than the A32 5G, that basically means that eventually this device will end support faster than this device. That's probably not really a big deal either way because both phones are still getting a lot of Android software updates into the future, but it is still something that's worth considering. Now, another awesome thing too about these devices is that both of them do support NFC. So if you do like to make mobile contactless payments using tap and pay, then you can do that here with either of these two phones. Now, I already talked quite a bit about the front panels here, but essentially with the A33 5G, we're getting smaller bezels all throughout, and then both phones do have water drop notches up top, but they are a little bit different in shape. Now, taking a look at the left side of both devices, we do have a pretty big difference in the sense that with the A33 5G, we do have kind of a frosted side to it, whereas it is glossy here with the A32 5G. I definitely feel like the A33 5G has a much more premium look to it compared to the A32 5G. However, keep in mind that both of these phones are made completely out of plastic besides the displays. And then on the left side of the A33 5G, we have nothing, whereas with the A32 5G, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of both phones, we have volume up, volume down, and then the power buttons. However, with the A32 5G, the power button is also a fingerprint sensor. Then up top here on these devices, with the A33 5G, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card, and then both phones do have noise-canceling microphones. And then on the bottom of both devices, they both have microphones, USB-C ports for charging and data transfer, speakers, and with the A32 5G, we do have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, unfortunately, with the A33 5G, there is no headphone jack at all. So if you do like to use traditional wired headphones, then just know that if you want to use that with the A33 5G, you will need an adapter. Whereas with the A32 5G, it does of course support it since we actually have the port on the device. Then taking a look at the back of both phones, we have a pretty similar layout for the actual cameras themselves. However, you can see that the camera module does stick out a little bit more with the A33 5G compared to the A32 5G. However, what's interesting is that it's more of a flush look with the A33 5G, whereas the cameras all kind of stick out a little bit with the A32 5G. In general, I definitely prefer the look and general design of the A33 5G compared to its predecessor. But this concludes my comparison video of the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G versus the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G. In general, this phone really brings us a lot of improvements compared to its predecessor, which is really awesome. I'm glad that Samsung continues to take their lower end and mid-range phones very seriously, as this is certainly a very good competitive device. But I hope you enjoyed this comparison. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next video.